Hey, Mike, do you really think there is Sasquatch here in Santa Cruz County?
Yeah, that's always the question. It's interesting. People quite often, I don't know, the grass is always greener somewhere else for a Sasquatch sometimes. People are reticent to accept them as being around, especially when you get an area where there seems to be a lot of people. The Santa Cruz area, of course, is fairly well populated. The little town of Felton here has 5,000 people in it, for example. But they're all crammed into these little side roads and on the sides of hills and so forth, back in the trees and various places. But there's also still a lot of space around here in between the houses where there's nothing, just dense forest. And in quite a few places in Santa Cruz County, there are very, very steep little canyons, multiple canyons. So like you could stand up in Washington State, I think, on the top of a mountain and look down through a series of valleys where you see one after another range of coniferous, forest cover on mountains, and you go, wow, of course a Bigfoot could live there. Well, you know what? You can do that in Santa Cruz too. You can stand up on the summit and look down across Nicene Marks, or what's known as the forest at Nicene Marks, and you see, a lot of little canyons, one after another, all covered in coniferous forest, and you don't even see too many houses there. Now, there are houses there. Nicene Marks, of course, has a couple of houses within the main part of the park, but it's comprised primarily of hiking trails. And we have a history of sightings all the way around the park, and even one in the center of the park. And one of our oldest sightings, a man came in, and in 1956 he saw one in the center of Nicene Marks. And, the sightings that we've had around here have been primarily daytime sightings, where people had plenty of light. They could see it quite clearly, and most of these sightings have been, longer than just a glimpse. They've had a minute or two to observe the creature. So this guy saw it. He came down the ridge on his bicycle, saw some motion, turned, and there it was. Stepped out from behind a tree, looked right at him. And then it did what they usually do. It turned around and walked away, went down in the canyon, and he said he could hear it for 5 minutes, cutting a swath through the woods. The other thing is that our area here, Santa Cruz, we feel is a very, very special place to be doing Bigfoot research because of the nature of the geography here. We have the Monterey Bay to the south of us, and then, of course, the rest of the Pacific coast, all the way up to San Francisco, or Half Moon Bay, I should say, on the coast. And there's a stretch of mountains there, the coastal mountains, and we've had sightings in there, too, up into San Mateo County, which is the next county north of us. But you go too far into San Mateo County, and you hit the sprawl of the peninsula. In other words, San Francisco, and then the greater peninsula sprawl comes down. So bingo, you hit city, you stop there. Now, if you head north directly from where we are here in Felton, you run into Los Gatos and the sprawl of Silicon Valley. So bingo, here you are. You're in the middle of a city again. If you go south of us, you do have access, and in so doing, you have to pass through a part of the county that actually produces a great amount of produce, vegetables and fruits that are sent all over the country. And it's an actual, like a supermarket or a produce market, Corralitos South in Santa Cruz. So why wouldn't the Bigfoot want to live here? Because there's all this, this food to eat. So we've got an abundance of food supply out on these little rural farms. People in the mountains have large parcels of land. Typically, you get 600 acres. They've got a house on where they're actually using 1 acre, 2 acres of the land. The rest is virtually untouched. But it's private property. Now, you don't expect people to be in there, and it's thick forest. It's the second growth forest that's in the valley now, and so there's all these instances like this where these things can hide in the deep woods, higher up on the mountains, And in this area, we're on the edge of the coast. We're part of the Pacific Rim. As everybody who's done any history of geology of the area knows, this was all volcanic. The entire Pacific Rim around the rim is volcanic in essence. Even right here in Santa Cruz, I've been told there are volcanic tunnels, fissures under the ground here, that there's a whole series of them. And we have what's known as the San Andreas earthquake fault that goes right directly along the top of the mountain here. And the fault and the epicenter of the earthquake from 20 years ago happens to be right near the spot where the Bigfoot was spotted in 1956 in Nicene Marks Park. Now, another thing that gives me an idea that what we have here is a subset of the entire Bigfoot phenomenon going on in Santa Cruz, and that's exactly what I think we have, is the fact that we have corroborated sightings, we have a history of sightings. We have recently found out that the Native Americans here, the Ohlone Indians, indeed had a word for Bigfoot. Not only did they have a word for a Bigfoot, they had a Bigfoot that they called by name. Tucacana, the Bigfoot that lives in Felton Flats. Kathy Strain found this out for us just recently. So we have the history of them in the area, which shows up in San Francisco newspapers and other local papers. We have the fact the natives here had a word for Bigfoot, and even had a Bigfoot they had named in the area right here in Felton. We have stories that go on over time of apparent Bigfoot that have been in an area for a stretch of time. For example, there's 2 or 3 corroborating stories telling us that there's been seen an 8-foot tall white Bigfoot in the coastal mountains between here and Half Moon Bay on more than one occasion. We also have heard about a Bigfoot here called the Dump Dweller, or the Ben Loma Dump Monster. We recently heard about another Bigfoot that apparently was howling so frequently in an area near the park I mentioned earlier, Nicene Marks, where the people have named it well, it's actually, they're hearing the sounds coming from the vicinity of the quarry on the western side of the park, which is called the Olive Springs Quarry, and they've called this thing the Olive Springs Howler. So there's another name. So just like you have the Honey Island Swamp Monster, and you have the Fouke, Arkansas had the Boggy Creek Monster, and so on. You have these local names applied by people who have ongoing experiences in a particular neighborhood, and that's going on here in Santa Cruz. And we have neighborhoods walking distance from the museum that have had experiences like this, where people in the neighborhood are, have all experienced these screams and so forth. So, do I think there's a Bigfoot presence in Santa Cruz? Yes, I do. And to back that up, and when we've had little episodes on here, video episodes where I've shown some of the stories and interviewed a few witnesses, and so we're going to continue to do that in the future as well, just to show that there are indeed Bigfoot in Santa Cruz.